Well, tonight it was to be Richard. He agreed to do it, but they've had computer problems. So we're here now, Wednesday, the 16th of January, Gaia's Vigil, dedicated to Gaia, our beloved Mother Earth. And we do this out of the goodness of our hearts, all of us, whoever our presenters are. We come in a spirit of love for Gaia, because she gives so much to us. She shares so much of nature's treasures with us. And what's so disappointing is that when she needs our help, she gets a wall of silence. And I guess that's how sad society is today. I call it the society of I want, I will get, and disregard your feelings. But Gaia, our Earth Mother, really does need the support of all God's children, not just the few, especially today, because in our quest for greatness, for enlightenment, especially the technological age, and so many automobiles and cars on the roads today, and deforestation, the CO2 emissions that would normally be taken up by the trees, the lungs of the universe, they're disappearing at such an alarming rate because of man's greed. Hence the great icebergs disappearing quite rapidly with the high tides, and of course the inclement weather. But this evening for our vigil I want to carry on from yesterday evening and sharing with you some of the wonderful words that Matthew Fox has used. Matthew, who was a great Dominican priest, but who was defrocked by the Catholic Church for daring to hold erroneous beliefs. In their opinion, they were erroneous theology. I don't know what planet they were on when they said that, because this book was printed in 1984 and I can't put it down, The Coming of the Cosmic Christ. It is one of the most beautiful pieces of work, and it touches my heart, and it actually, in a strange sort of way, invites you to explore the mystery of creation and God. Parts of it can get a little bit heavy, particularly the anecdotal evidence which he's had to use to substantiate or support his line of argument. But really, it is a beautiful piece of work. And it's a piece of work that everybody should read. The Coming of the Cosmic Christ by Matthew Fox. Excuse me. And it's funny, this morning after we finished morning prayer, I thought, oh, I could just do with having a rest today. And you know, as I was in the kitchen tidying up after feeding the dogs and the hens, and I got a little nod on my heart. Will you sit in front of the camera and let's do it? 12 minutes into it, the doorbell rings, and I thought, oh no. So I thought, well, I'm not meant to do it. But then I heard an inner voice speak to my heart. Go back and let's start again. And I thought, oh dear, dear Lordy, Lordy. So we did. We came back. We started afresh. And interestingly, the theme for the video, which is nearly an hour, the Teo community and Christ consciousness. And I thought, what on earth do you say about that? And the book just kept opening at different pages, and I was just guided to read. Now my head was kicking in saying, stop, 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 but the heart was saying, carry on, do it, do it. So it's an amazing inspiration. I haven't watched it through. I would like you to. And it's on YouTube. And it's been uploaded. It's there. And the one thing it's done for me, it's made me appreciate, despite all the struggles, and trust me, there have been many from 2006 with the Teo community. And despite all of that, there is such a similarity in how we as members, brothers and sisters, embrace the cosmic Christ, where we embrace Mother Earth, where we embrace God through the natural world, which Francis did. And in the book, it shares with you some of the most beautiful quotes. Yes, of course, from Hildegard of Bingen, Thomas Aquinas, some of the great fathers of the church in the early century. And it just brings it alive. That being a member of the community is about finding your comfort zone and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And though the club you belong to, the church you belong to, might say, oh, that's New Age, we're not buying into that. The message in between the front and back cover is really a language of love. It's an invitation to the heart to explore creation, Mother Earth, a loving God, the cosmic Christ. So let us just go with this. We pick up from last night where we shared Mother Earth is dying. Well, here we're looking at the mystical brain is dying. Where does our matriarchal consciousness come from? Laurens van der Post, a Belgian ecologist who was raised in Africa among a pygmy tribe, theorizes that the reason we exploit, damage and savage the earth is because we are out of balance. How true. How very true. We have lost our sense of proportion, he says, and we cannot be proportionate unless we honor the wilderness and the natural person within. That is, ourselves. That is where the balance comes from. Our greed and aggression and corruption by power comes from cheating that first person within ourselves out of his natural inheritance. Profound, isn't it? That is such a profound statement of fact, that in our quest for success motivated by greed, we've created an imbalance within ourselves. Within ourselves. And we've denied ourselves our natural inheritance. Wow. He says, I agree that the human race, as it is principally constituted today, is indeed out of balance. with Mother Earth becoming our primary victim. A crucial dimension of this imbalance in the West is the stunted growth of our mystical awareness. What does mystical awareness mean? Mystical awareness. Mystical awareness. And the underdevelopment of our mystical brain. Our brains are amazingly complex creations of time, nature and divinity. Part of what we know about the brain is that the right and left hemispheres perform different tasks. The left lobe accomplishes analytical and verbal processes for us, and the right lobe accomplishes the synthetic, sensual, and mystical tasks. Wow! Western civilization, which dominates the globe today, has invested almost exclusively in left lobe processes, in education, politics, economics, and guess what? Religion. Once during an evening seminar, I explained the concept, he said, of the left and right brain to a group of students. The next day I asked if anyone had had a dream they wanted to share, and a woman told us of dreaming that her left brain was as big as a weather balloon that goes up 65,000 feet, and that her right brain was a dried up prune. Oh, that's me. There lies the epitaph of Western civilization. Our right brains are mystical brains, our maternal brains that embrace the whole and resist, big word coming up, compartmentalization, have become dried up prunes. Dried up prunes. In spite of religion's reluctance to pursue its own mystical tradition and education's fear of the right brain, I continually find right brains awakening in our time. Engineers, physicists, policemen and women, artists and musicians, social activists and teachers, therapists and doctors, lawyers and politicians, homemakers and students, young and old, the religious and the no longer religious, and even some ministers and priests. This is no small revolution. Within it lies the last great hope for Mother Earth. I believe this awakening comes from Mother Earth herself, who is not inert and passive, but very aware and sensitive that her days are numbered. With every MX missile placed on her bosom, 3,000 creation mystics are coming out of the closet. Of that I am sure. Much is happening today to awaken the mystic and maternal force in us. Of primary importance is the rejection of Newton's piecemeal consciousness. For example, knowing the part will instruct us in the whole. The whole is greater than its parts, and the quest for the whole, for unity, is a mystical quest par excellence. It is the quest of Einstein's science, sometimes referred to as the holographic universe, meaning a living macrocosm model. Brain researcher and neurosurgeon Carl Jeffrey Bram, in his book Language of the Brain, the English physicist David Bohm both celebrate unity in diversity and diversity in unity, as in a hologram, with each part being in the whole and the whole being in each part. Ours is a time of emerging awareness of the interconnectivity of all things. Mysticism is all about interconnectivity. Thus ours is a mystical time. Wouldn't you agree? This time is a mystical time. More and more are searching for that inner knowing of spirituality, following the heart, perceived as being antisocial, but all we're doing is following that hunger deep within us for mysticism, a relationship with God, without all the religious baggage and fear. Consider, for example, from our Western tradition, the following statements from two of our great mystics, Hildegard of Bingen and Meister Eckhart. Everything that is in the heavens, on the earth, and under the earth is penetrated with connectedness, penetrated with relatedness. That's Hildegard. All creatures are interdependent, says Eckhart. Relation is the essence of everything that is, Eckhart. God has arranged everything in the universe in consideration of everything else, Hildegard. Clearly there was a time in Western consciousness when the right lobe was not a dried up prune. Mother was not dying. Matthew brings us to another section called Creativity is Dying. Another level to understand that our mother is dying is the issue of human imagination and creativity. Carl Jung said that creativity emerges from the realms of the mothers. The maternal is the place of new births, of new wombs, of new stories, of new beginnings, of new possibilities. But how fruitful is it of late? How many abortions of imagination and imaginative individuals are performed daily and weekly in our educational, familial, and religious institutions. A teacher of third graders for 21 years told me she was convinced that by the third grade, 95% of the children in our country have lost their creativity. What efforts do our churches, synagogues and schools make to tap the creativity of the young? What prominence does art as meditation, for example, have in education and in religions? Imagination denied, war ruled the nations. William Blake observed nearly 2 centuries ago, yet it was not until the 20th century that we learned how thoroughly war can rule nations, how nations like our own can spend trillions of dollars on weaponry and war preparations, while its young fall into despair, spawned by unnourished imaginations, apathy, dropping out, drugs, alcohol dependency, punk behavior, suicide. When war rules nations long enough, it also begins to rule the nations young. War turns inwards and against the self. If the divine power of imagination within us all is not tapped for its beauty and surprise, ecstasy and possibilities, it will degenerate into self-loathing, self-contempt and violence, that is, war towards self or others. Psychoanalyst Rollo May comments on what happens when imagination is cut off. Imagination is the outreaching of the mind. The psychotic patient could not tolerate the possibility of becoming lost in the open spaces. His capacities for abstract thought, for transcending the immediate facts in terms of the possible, what I call in this context imagination, were severely curtailed. He felt powerless to change the environment to make it adequate to his needs. Such behavior is indicative of what life is when imaginative powers are cut off. The feeling of powerlessness is overtaking our time. From it, as Buddhist scholar Joanna Macy points out, comes despair, and despair conceals apathy. Apathy, Macy teaches, is not a lack of interest or caring, but the cover-up we create when powerlessness overwhelms us. When mother imagination is dying, powerlessness takes her place. Notice the connections, indeed the interconnectivity between the matricide of the right or mystical brain and the matricide of the imagination. May tells us, in our day of dedication to facts and hard-headed objectivity, we have disparaged imagination. It gets us away from reality. It taints our work with subjectivity, and worst of all, it often taken as the frosting to life rather than as the solid food. Throughout Western history, our dilemma has been whether imagination shall turn out to be artifice or the source of being. What if imagination and art are not frosting at all, but the fountainhead of human experience? It gets quite heavy, doesn't it? But I think what they're saying, if we stunt the growth of the child grows up and stunts the growth within and in others. Wisdom appears universally in cultures and religions as a feminine, maternal figure, and wisdom is dying. Consider how our civilization has, under the driving influence of the patriarchal enlightenment, produced so much knowledge and information that we have found it necessary to invent a multi-billion-dollar industry to store it all and retrieve it on command. Computers are the libraries of such a civilization. But what would it take to store all the wisdom we have accumulated these past 3 centuries? Where is the wisdom? Why has Mother Wisdom been treated so coarsely? Wisdom personifies all the mothers in peril I have been naming. Wisdom is of Mother Earth, for nature contains the oldest wisdom in the universe. Wisdom requires the right brain as well as the left, for it is birthed by both analysis and synthesis. Wisdom requires imagination, and she nurtures it. Wisdom often comes via the creative spokespersons of a culture, in the handing on of stories, sagas, myths, images from the past and from the future. There is no mother wisdom without mother creativity. Wisdom is found in all creative works, observed Hildegard of Bingen. Wisdom demands a cosmology, a relating to the whole, a healing of the whole when it is broken, a passion for the whole. In his study of the decline of wisdom, French philosopher Gabriel Marcel found that in all religions, East and West, wisdom was linked with our learning of and relating to the ways of the cosmos. Wisdom is never anthropocentric. Wisdom is the Magna Mater, the Great Mother. Wisdom is the Great Mother, who emerges from the sea, from the waters of birth and replenishment. Wisdom is playful and erotic. Wisdom seeks her beloved at any costs, and does foolish things to find the beloved. Eros is the lover of wisdom. May points out, and the force in us that brings to birth both wisdom and beauty. Several years ago, he says, I gave a series of lectures at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. I was told that I could pick my own topics. Wow. Except the first, which was to be wisdom and the university. I wrestled with this topic more than I've ever wrestled with a lecturing assignment, before or since. I knew that I had to speak honestly. 200 faculty administrators and students gathered for my first talk, which I began. To speak of wisdom in a university today is a bit like talking of chastity in a brothel. What a definition! To speak of wisdom in a university today is a bit like talking of chastity in a brothel. No one goes to the university today for wisdom, and if they do, they either flunk out the first term or change their ideals rapidly. Instead of talking about wisdom and the university, which would have been a very brief lecture, I talked about why wisdom was no longer a category in education and university. University originally meant a place where one went to experience his or her place in the universe, thus to find wisdom. Today, as a result of the Newtonian paradigm, our educational structures are built on a parts mentality. Each area of learning, sociology, psychology, science, art, maths, history, religion, is seen simply as a part. No attempt at integration of the understanding of the whole, that is wisdom, is made. The goal of education is not wisdom, but getting a job. Where Eros and play are dying, Cosmos and Earth are also dying. And so too is Mother Wisdom. Matricide encompasses wisdom in its sheath of destruction. Wow, powerful stuff. Let us just stop there, because the next section is called The Youth Are Dying, and rather than go down that route, let us just stop. And I ask for permission to have a drink, because I'm thirsty. Let us just gather our thoughts. Let us come into the presence of the cosmic Christ. Let us come into the presence of Gaia, Kuan Yin, Magdalena, Mother Mary. Let us embrace the divine feminine and aspect of God. Let us ask our higher self, that part of us that is divine, that part of us that is fed by God. Let us take a back step from all that learning. Let us come to this simply like Francis, where he knelt in the church at San Damiano, a church that was falling down round his ears, but the crucifix was still there on the wall, and he looked at it intently, having just come back from the army, where he'd spent time in prison for womanizing and all sorts of things. Francis was a man of the people. He was a man's man. But he knelt down and he prayed, and God spoke to him. Jesus came to him and said, "Francis, rebuild my church." He looked around, thinking there was somebody else behind him who was more scholarly, more devout, more holy. And when he realized it was him, he found it hard, as many of us find it hard today, to stay grounded in a community when we find that human nature being what it is, that those who take their eyes off God and start focusing on themselves, their egos, we soon see another side of the coin. We see the fragility of community and how mankind can drop and lower itself to the lower depths of destroying oneself. But Francis heard the voice, "Rebuild my church." But he didn't hear it all, because God didn't tell him it all. He waited till Francis said yes. And slowly, slowly, God revealed his plan to Francis. And that's how it is today. For those of us who've surrendered our heart to God, as an ambassador for peace, when we embrace all faiths, we're not given the full extent of the invitation. We're given little teeny weeny bits to whet the appetite. And when the time is right, in God's time, the heart is invited to embrace wisdom. The heart is invited to embrace Mother Earth. The heart is invited to embrace God through nature, the natural world, creation. And when we relax for periods of stillness, we can sense the peace of God. We can sense the presence of God. And we step into the love of God. And the cosmic Christ touches us, as He's touching many today. But you would expect the ones who've dedicated their lives in service to God, the holy men and women, the scholars, the academics, the clergy, that they will be the first to jump at this invitation. But no, they're the first to reject it, because they judge it on its face value rather than being still and allowing it to filter through into their heart. But they're not using the right brain. And so it is, and so shall it be. Many are called to the banquet to partake of the tree of life. Many are called, but only a few stay, because the others have to work it out for themselves. They have to sit down with their ruler and pencil. They have to draw their graphs. They've got to be precise in their measurements. They have to fully understand the mind of God before they can say yes to God. And that destroys the gift of faith. For faith isn't based on a measuring rule, or a pencil and a sharpener and a rubber. Faith is a gift of love from God. It is freely available. And the reason why many haven't got it is because they haven't got off their Castlemaine necks to ask for it. Forgive me for that. I quite like that Australian caption from a TV advert. Their Castlemaine eggs, or as the Americans would say, their butt. And that's the problem today. Too many people are theorizing. Too many people are sat on the fence like a frustrated ballet dancer, and they're wanting someone to push them and then lead them like a dog on a leash. That is not faith. Faith is a gift, and if our hearts are open, we jump at it, because it's the higher self within us that responds when our brain, right and left, is sluggish. So to embrace the cosmic Christ, we have to be able to embrace the tree of life on which hung the Blessed One. And the tree of life encompasses all of the elements that the cosmic Christ has brought to us, that the cosmic Christ brings to us. For in each of the 7 elements of the course, heart-centered, they are of God, designed by God to embrace the God within each soul, so that that soul is liberated from fear, so that that soul can fly and take its rightful place next to Mother Earth and be the co-creator of God that it agreed to be. I think that's my lot now for this evening. It's now almost 9:15, and I'm due back on at midnight. I hope I haven't been too heavy. It has, some of the sections I was reading was getting a little bit heavy, but I hope it meant something for you. And hopefully tomorrow evening, Richard and Elsie are supposed to be down to do something tomorrow evening as well, but we don't know the state of their computer. But if they're here tomorrow, brilliant. If not, it's me again. But I know I'll be back, hopefully, God willing, on Friday evening at 8 o'clock, and we'll talk a little bit more, but we'll try and ask upstairs to choose a lighter peace. But the cosmic Christ is living, is vibrant, and is a part of us. And all we have to do is to empty ourself of self. Take the me and the I out of the relationship with God and allow God become the we, you and me. Good night, God bless you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. Good night, Mary in Blackpool, and good night, Miriam in New Zealand. Until we meet again.